Hey everyone, welcome back to Adventures of Andrew and August, the video series where we talk everything Andrew. Today we're going to be comparing three different soups. We're going to do a taste test on them. So on today's episode we have Pacific Foods Organic Chicken Noodle Soup. Next up we have Campbell's Chunky Chicken Noodle Soup. And finally, we have Progresso chicken noodle. I've heated up each bowl in the microwave just for simplicity. I did heat them up all at once to try to keep all the temperatures the same and make them comparable. Um, I will also note that most of them are pretty comparable in price. The Campbell's was actually the cheapest at $3.99, then Progresso at $4.39, and the Pacific Foods at $4.99. So pretty close, but a little bit of a difference. Um, as far as nutrition goes, the let's see, sorry. The sodium content is fairly similar between the Pacific and Progresso. We're looking at about 30% for both of those, and then the Campbell's is a bit lower at only 18%. Um, Calories wise, they're all about 100 calories. We've got 100 on the Progresso, 110 on the Campbell's, and then 80 on the Pacific. So um, all around, we're about the same. Um, just looking to see if there are any other notable differences. Doesn't look like there's anything that would be surprising about them. As far as the look of the soups go, I'm going to put these off to the side. Visually, the soups are quite different. Um, I'll start with the Progresso. This one has, what I would expect from a typical canned soup um, look to it. The carrots are kind of in a disc form. Um, Chicken looks to be cubed, and it does have those classic egg noodles included. Um, Somewhere in here there's some celery, but I have noticed already that each of these soups, while they do contain celery, the celery is pretty light um, compared to the rest of the ingredients. The color itself of the broth is a bit of a cloudy golden yellow with a little bit of, I'm going to say, parsley. Yes, parsley in there. Um, Moving on to the Campbell's. This one is very similar to the Progresso in color, but I do notice that it has a thin um, film of some sort of oil in there. So we'll see if that changes the texture or the flavor of it. Um, Another difference between these is that the carrots appear to be cubed rather than um, disc shaped. Um, and then same with the celery, it is just kind of cubed. Um, yeah, everything else appears to be the same, classic egg noodles, cubed chicken, um, what you would expect. The Pacific Foods has a much different um, broth color to it. It's much more pale, um, not quite a tan, but it's a very clear, pale color. It still has those classic egg noodles. The chicken cubes are much smaller. The carrot cubes are again much smaller, and same with the celery. This one's very different because it does contain peas. So I'm curious to see how that works with everything else. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to kind of jump right into it. So let's start over here. Well, let's work my left to right. So I'm just going to get some broth real quick. Okay. Um, Not a lot of flavor in there. This one I did notice does not have any seasoning to it. So there's no parsley flakes in there. It seems to be lacking a salty flavor, despite having, I believe, okay, so it's the second highest at 28% sodium. Um, but it just seems to be lacking in flavor. Interesting. So now we're going to try the broth of the Campbell's soup. Okay, that one's pretty good. I have to go in again. I think I do notice the that oil um, film. It's not bad, but it is noticeable that it's a little less of a broth and has that oil. I don't know how to explain it, um, but it is much more flavorful than the Pacific. So now I'm going to move over to the Progresso. Okay, this one has a bit of a thicker broth than the other two. I'm just noticing. That's pretty good. Um, I do notice, again, between the two, the Progresso and the Campbell's, definitely more flavor, and I do notice the the herbs in there that this one might have thyme in it. Actually, they both might have thyme and parsley. Um, I don't know what Pacific was thinking. Um, so let's go ahead and now try some carrots and just see how that is. Okay. Um, the carrots, I would say they're a good soft texture. You don't really want a crunchy carrot in your soup. No one wants that. Um, I do feel like the Pacific is a little more has that more that earthy taste to it, that I would expect from maybe an organic soup. Um, I do like that, but we'll see how the other two fare. So let me go grab this. Again, these carrots are much bigger than the Pacific. Interesting. Um, the firmness of this one was a little meatier. Um, I don't know if that's just because it's bigger or um, if they did something with the prep process, cooking, pre-cooking. Um, I'm not sure. Flavor wise, the this one does taste a little more like your standard store bought carrots that you would then cook up. Um, it's not bad. I do prefer the carrots in the Pacific. So let's move on to the Progresso. Okay. Um, I like that one. That one's good. This one, the carrots, I think, are the biggest of the three. Um, it had a nice soft texture to, so it wasn't quite as meaty to it. And the flavor was a little bit in between the two others, where it did have a little bit more of an earthy taste, um, but not quite as earthy as the Pacific, um, but also didn't have that store bought taste to it. Um, so far, I think I like the Progresso as for the carrots. I'm going to jump over back to the Pacific and see if I can find a little. Again, the celery is a little hard to come by on these. And I don't know if you can see, but it's quite a tiny piece. Okay. Um, Similar to the carrots in this one, the celery does have a bit of an earthy taste. Um, I was a bit surprised. The celery seemed less cooked or a little firmer than the carrots did. Um, I don't know if that's just the piece that I had or what they were going for. Um, I'm gonna try the other two and decide if I prefer a little bit more uh, firmness to my celery or not. I'm not really sure. Let's see if I can find some. That might be a struggle on this one. Here we go. Okay, so this piece of celery in the Campbell's was a bigger piece, and was much softer than the Pacific. Um, I think I like a softer celery. It just, when I like to eat soup, I tend to eat it fast and just nonstop. So the softer it is, the better for me. But I did like this one better. I didn't notice any of that earthy taste. I also didn't specifically notice any flavor that kind of reminded me of a store bought celery. Just kind of in the middle there. So I'm going to try the Progresso. Oh. Um, that one I would say has a better flavor and just right in between the two, the Pacific and Campbell's as far as the firmness goes. I think I really like that. That's a good happy medium for me. Um, so I'm going to give the celery to the Progresso, and we'll go back and kind of give a final wrap up of which one wins in which category. Um, I suspect we're going to move on to the noodles themselves. I suspect they're all going to be about the same, but let's see. Okay, that one was a little al dente, not quite. Didn't have a crunch, but it was firmer than I was expecting. I'm just gonna jump over here. Okay, that one was actually about the same. Um, Maybe I just need to change my expectations on that. But I did get a little bit of the broth on this one, and as I said before, the broth on these two is much more flavorful than the Pacific. Okay, now the Progresso had the texture that I was expecting from a canned soup. Um, nice and soft, not like it's going to fall apart, but easy to just kind of throw back, as opposed to these where I kind of had to chew it a little bit. Um, so, very interesting there. Um, Finally, I'm going to move on to the chicken itself and then we'll wrap it up. Actually, I am going to see if I can find a P in this one here because that is the unique piece of it. So here's a P. Tastes like a P. Um, I could take it or leave it. It's there. It throws an extra texture in there for me, but overall not anything significant. Um, so I am going to get back to trying this chicken. Um, the chicken's not bad on this one. It's a little tough because again the pieces of chicken and just everything is much smaller than the other two. Um, so it's a little tough to get more from it from each individual piece. Um, I'll do one big scoop of everything right at the end, but it had a good flavor. It was a little on the chewier side than I was expecting, but let's try the others and see if I need to adjust my expectations. I actually like the flavor of the Pacific chicken better um, than the Campbell's, but I did like the size of the chicken and the texture of the chicken of the Campbell's over the Pacific. I'm going to jump over to our last one here, the Progresso. Um, so the Progresso, I'll say, had the least flavor of the three, which is interesting. Um, I and the texture was very soft. I almost just was able to crush it with my tongue on the roof of my mouth. I don't think I like that. I think the Campbell's actually wins on the chicken. Um, so to finish it all off, I'm going to take a bite of each of these and try and get as much variety on each spoon as possible. So let's see what we can do here. Okay. Okay. Um, so overall, I'm going to say that I think I like the Campbell's the most. It seems to have the most flavor. Um, The Progresso definitely had the better um, carrots by far. Um, I forget what we said about the celery between these two. Um, I want to say it was the Campbell's that won out on the celery, and then the broth. I'm actually going to give the Progresso the broth win on this one. Um, so overall, I'm actually going to switch it up and say the Progresso is the overall best. Um, the again, the chicken on the Campbell's I think is the best, but the Progresso, they also have the better noodles themselves. So between the vegetables and the noodles and the broth, um, the chicken wasn't bad. It was just it's got way more going for it. Um, the Pacific was really a disappointment overall. I think I knew that kind of going in once I opened up the can and saw the broth. Um, and it's odd because I don't even know that that is the Pacific is the most healthy of the three. Um, I'm not going to try and tell you which one to eat based on health, but if you're looking for flavor, I personally am going with the Progresso. Um, and that's it. Thanks for sticking with me here, and make sure to leave your comments below if you have a favorite, if you've tried each one and have a favorite, or if you've just tried two or even one. Um, let me know your thoughts. Uh, remember to like and subscribe, and remember to always make your own adventures. Thanks.